Don't move, son. Put your hands on top of your head.
This is the moment Robert Bennett Jr.'s reign of terror along Washington Boulevard in Elkridge came to an end, Howard County police say. The department releasing body-worn camera footage of the 27-year-old's arrest while announcing the alleged sex trafficker and violent drug dealer is now behind bars. Bennett facing 47 criminal charges and more than 500 years in prison if convicted on all counts. According to court charging documents, his arrest back in February capped off a months-long undercover investigation that started with a tip in November and included help from confidential informants, electronic and physical surveillance, and license plate readers. According to police, not only did he operate out of this area in Elkridge, places up and down Washington Boulevard, including gas stations, fast food parking lot, a shopping center, and motels too, police say this is where that operation came to an end when he was arrested between picnic tables behind this ice cream shop. In a 12-page statement of charges, Bennett is accused of sex trafficking and being the biggest drug dealer at the Terrace Motel in Elkridge, but also of not being very good at any of it. Didn't use burner phones like you see on TV and in the movies. He used his real one, the account in his name, the same number he put on numerous online commercial sex ads, the same number he used to text undercover officers about his stable of girls and which ones like to party, and the same number that was used for court-approved location tracking. He aspired to be a drug dealer, according to his alleged victims, but he had to force drugs on people who didn't want them and then assault them for the money. He also wanted to be a, quote, pimp, one alleged victim told police, but he was too hostile for it, she said. He had zero customer service. Tonight, Howard County police say Mr. Bennett is being held without bail at the Howard County Detention Center, and they want the community to know that the department is committed to ongoing efforts to arrest sex traffickers and to offer assistance to their victims.
Hey, so right now you're being arrested for engaging in prostitution.
Tonight we're focusing on John's basically in the county who is trying to get some sort of a sexual act, right, in exchange for some money.
Deputies, along with wired and some armed undercover cops posing as prostitutes, conducted a sting operation in North Sacramento around the Watt Avenue area, which has historically been a populated place for sex workers.
There's lots of sex workers, especially underage sex workers that are out there.
This is video from an earlier sting operation showing just how many sex workers could be out on any given night. Investigators used drones during Friday night's operation, keeping a close eye on decoys and surrounding areas.
This is just one night, and this stuff is happening every day, but we're doing the best that we can to at least mitigate it as much as possible.
Fortunately for deputies, they don't come across this kind of situation often.
The gentleman in particular who's driving this vehicle had made a deal with our undercover female sex workers.
All while his sleeping toddler daughter was in the back seat. He surrendered without any problems.
We're going to contact the mother, which hopefully we can get a hold of.
In another part of town, decoy prostitutes solicit Johns, who hit them up for sex and offer to pay them money. Once a deal is made, they meet around the corner where they're arrested and their vehicle is towed.
Over 600 arrests have been made doing these operations in the last 2 years. So we're pretty happy with those results and that type of an impact.
Last night's operation alone yielded 53 total arrests, according to Sheriff spokesman Sergeant Amar Gandhi. Deputies also seized one firearm, which was pulled out on female undercover undercover cops, but they're all okay. SWAT members were there within seconds.
3, 4.
A nonprofit partner among the team of advocates and social workers on hand helped rescue one sex worker who was flown back to her home out of state.
Human trafficking, sexual assault, and false imprisonment allegations dating back years.
That's what our Bill Miston uncovered as he digs into the investigation into a Milwaukee real estate agent and what allegedly happened inside of his home.
Mr. Chronister, in count 1, you're charged with human trafficking.
Last week, 38-year-old Austin Chronister appeared in court, charged with sexual assault and false imprisonment. Prosecutors say these crimes date back years.
As the state is aware, after a search of the defendant's residence,
it all centers around this home on State Street. Newly filed court documents say police searched the home last week, the so-called House St. Pierre Chronister co-owns with Milwaukee attorney Kristen St. Pierre.
I'd like to speak to you about Austin Chronister.
St. Pierre has not been charged, but in her home, police were looking for contracts signed by 2 women to live there. Police say those contracts called for obedience and deference, honesty, color, and sexual play, and requiring the women to change their last names to St. Pierre. Back in November 2020, a woman walked into District 3. She wanted to report she was having second thoughts about an agreement to be Chronister's, quote, servant, and was trying to get out of the relationship. The woman said she stayed at work late to avoid being forced to come home and have sex. The woman filed 2 restraining orders months apart. Both were dismissed for being improperly served. Then in May of last year, a second woman walked into District 3. Filings say the woman told investigators Chronister brutally sexually assaulted her. Both women say they met Chronister online.
Chronister is being held on a $75,000 bond.
Well, the police told me this morning that the 7-star spa was closed down earlier this week after they found acts of prostitution here and evidence of that at the spa. Now, also speaking to Reno PD, they told me that this was part of a 7-month sting operation, and they just now are getting a handle. Sometimes these things can take a while to uncover, and there are still other spas that they say could possibly also be in cahoots. We're going to take a look at what they told me earlier and also what Safe Embrace, a nonprofit that helps the victims of sex trafficking, says about issues like this in our community.
There was sex trafficking occurring here with prostitution, and so that is something that they are looking into.
Prostitution is legal in 4 Nevada counties: Churchill, Humboldt, Lyon, and Story. But Officer Johnson says that it is important to note that in most of Nevada, prostitution is illegal.
Prostitution is illegal here in Reno, and I think that misconception when people come over the hill from California or other states, they think that it is legalized here, and it is not.
And statistics show that those looking to pay for sex are perpetuating human trafficking here in Nevada.
So if you're out here soliciting individuals for prostitution, you are perpetuating the exploitation of human beings.
Awaken, a nonprofit that helps survivors of human trafficking, says that in northern Nevada, over 1,500 women and girls are being sold for sex illegally online at any point in time.
Human trafficking, sex trafficking is, of course, very prevalent in Nevada. If I remember correctly, Nevada holds like the 2nd spot in the nation. It's a new form of slavery.
Safe Embrace Client Services Manager Leslie Berg says that victims can be posted online or through social media. And Officer Johnson confirms that some of the evidence from the massage parlor's illicit acts come from pictures and videos of people performing sex acts at the establishment.
Can be as easy as accessing that sort of environment via the internet.
We're able to locate online advertisements depicting acts of prostitution occurring here at the massage parlor. And so they also conducted several surveillance operations down here.
Officer Johnson says that the investigation is still ongoing, and they're looking into a few other massage parlors around the Reno area that they suspect could be involved or have shown evidence of sex trafficking or prostitution themselves.
North Carolina is seeing a record number of human trafficking cases. New numbers show in 2023, 235 cases were reported statewide, though many are never reported. Already this year, 2 Amber Alerts involving teenagers were linked to human trafficking. Many cases stem from those connections made online.
It is a crime that is spiking and one that often is in plain sight. Human trafficking is everywhere, and it often starts with victims being lured right online. The details of what happened here on Hatwalt Lane are disturbing. It started with a meeting on Snapchat. A female met this man, Dustin Letchworth, and they met here in Wendell. That's when she was introduced to another man, Daryl Holden.
It doesn't matter, what economic status someone is or what neighborhood they live in.
According to a new search warrant I obtained, the woman engaged in sex acts with the men to pay off her debt. Then she tried to escape the home, but warrants say she was violently assaulted. Warrants say she overheard a plan to kill her with a machete and a wrench, but she managed to escape. She was chased and drugged back inside, finally being rescued by her mother. It is yet another case of human trafficking, a prevalent crime here in our state. We have covered multiple instances just this year. These two Harnett County men are accused of taking a 15-year-old to the Outer Banks to engage in sex acts.
So folks don't want to believe that we have human trafficking here in North Carolina.
However, according to Pam Strickland with ENC Stop Human Trafficking, in 2020, 260 cases of trafficking were reported to the National Human Trafficking Hotline, ranking North Carolina number 9 among the 50 states.
From the calls coming from North Carolina to the hotline that year, 235 cases of human trafficking were confirmed.
Strickland says, however, because human trafficking is a crime which hides in the shadows, the true number of cases in our state is likely much higher. In our state, hotel-based commercial sex is the most prevalent form of human trafficking. As far as the case out of Wake County, both men have been indicted for those crimes.
Arkansas Governor Sarah Huckabee Sanders officially signing 2 bills this week aimed at strengthening protection of minors from sex crimes.
361 changes the definition of a child from anyone 17 years old and under to now 18 years old and under, and Act 362 broadens the requirements for lifetime registration as a sex offender. According to the Child Welfare League of America, human trafficking is the second largest criminal industry in the world. Lawmakers in Arkansas are working to tackle the issue through legislation. This week, Governor Sanders signed into law 2 bills that prosecutors say will help put away sex offenders.
There was a case where, upon appeal, some of the images that were used in the conviction of a sex predator, those images were overturned. And based on kind of the definitions around how these images were displayed,
the predator involved in that case ended up going free. That prompted Senator Missy Irvin and her constituents to draft a bill clarifying that definition.
In this piece of legislation, Now Act, we have changed that definition from the age of 17 to 18 to make sure that that's clarified. We're talking about these images of these children and how they are shown and how they are viewed.
They also added new criteria to the sex offender lifetime registry. An offender over 24 years old at the time of the crime, whose victim was under 15, will now be required to register. Benton County Prosecutor Brian Sexton says Benton County receives sex offender cases often.
And it's depressing when you start to think about it. But unfortunately, if we don't enforce laws like this, that's the outcome. We've got a lot more victims out there who will need our help, and changes like this will give us additional means to deal with these offenders.
Last year, Arkansas State Police's human trafficking force reportedly identified 134 victims during their recovery operations.
We're still working to learn more information about a raid that happened at a Frida's Sports Bar on McCarty and Garfield in East Houston. Several federal agencies were involved, including ICE and the Texas Alcohol and Beverage Commission.
Well, that's right. We know that the raid happened last night just after 11 p.m. Like you mentioned, at Frida's. You can see the bar here behind me. We also know that TABC was the lead agency on this investigation. They were assisted by Homeland Security or ICE agents, as well as the FBI and the District Attorney's Office. Now, the District Attorney's Office says that this raid was triggered by an investigation into a wrong-way fatal crash that happened on February 1st. That crash happened on 610 and the Ship Channel Bridge. The wrong-way driver and passenger were killed, and the woman in the car that they hit was charged with DWI. TABC says during the investigation into that fatal crash, investigators learned that people in the community called with complaints or tips on suspected human trafficking or prostitution at Frida's. During the raid, 25 possible human trafficking victims were interviewed and given information for safety resources, but no one was arrested. A number of people were were also taken, loaded into vans and taken to an ICE facility in Conroe.
Human trafficking is a nationwide issue, and Ohio is no exception.
In 2023, the National Human Trafficking Hotline received more than 800 calls from the state alone. Experts say these numbers tend to rise during major events.
And with March Madness coming to the city of Cleveland in just a matter of days.
Well, outside Rocket Arena, signs are already plastered promoting the NCAA March Madness tournament. You'll also spot some talking about.
They say are a series of rotating messages that say things like it's madness to think that sex buying is a victimless crime.
Human trafficking.
It's madness to think that sex buying is just a game or sex buying is foul.
The signs are a part of a nationwide billboard campaign by Rights for Girls to combat sex trafficking that happens leading up to a major sporting event.
Despite all the celebration and excitement, it's important for people to know that there is this dark underbelly of sex trafficking and exploitation that can take place.
What made you decide Cleveland?
Well, Cleveland is one of the cities that is hosting games during this tournament, and Cleveland is also one of the cities that has a number of interstates.
Yeah, human trafficking absolutely happens in the city of Cleveland.
Denisha Green with the Cleveland Rape Crisis Center agrees that trafficking occurs in Cleveland, and it can happen right before your eyes.
Signs of human trafficking can look like signs of control or manipulation, someone not having personal identification, unexplained or unusual travel arrangements.
So we reached out to the FBI, who tell us human trafficking can happen anytime in any city. They say before big events like the Super Bowl, they do see an increase in activity. They remind the public to remain vigilant as they continue to do their work to stop it.
It's business as usual for an organization like ours. We serve survivors and will continue to do it ahead of events or not.
On the billboard, there's a link to the Rights for Girls website with more information on trafficking. Yasmin hopes that through this, they can educate the community.
We really hope that people will take a look at the report and the campaign and really understand the harms of these types of behaviors, not just on women and girls, but on our communities as a whole.
To better protect minors that are victims of sex trafficking, the Survivor Support and Demand Reduction Act was introduced, making it a crime to purchase a minor for sex.
At 16 and 17-year-old, I was being trafficked. I was being sold by drug dealers and different things like that, and they never faced any kind of punishment.
Odessa Perkins is a sex trafficking survivor who has been fighting to protect all sex trafficking victims. February 24th, during a legislative session, Assemblywoman Maggie Krell and Senator Shannon Grove introduced AB 379. The Survivor Support Demand Reduction Act to ensure that the crime of purchasing a minor for sex applies in any case where the victim is under 18.
We had to make a split decision. Do we not protect 15 and below, or do we, continue to fight?
Previous bill, SB 1414, protected certain minors, excluding the ages of 16 and 17.
I made a promise that I would continue to fight for those children to be all protected under the same piece of legislation.
AB 379 would include all ages under 18 and those charged with prostitution under current law for receiving something of value in exchange for a sex act must be offered a diversion for the first and second time offenses rather than criminal penalties. It also addresses the issue of loitering for the purpose to buy a minor for sex, and establishes the Survivor Support Fund, directing fines collected from offenders to community-based organizations like Empowerment in Bakersfield, founded by Perkins.
I host human trafficking symposiums to educate the community. I go into the schools and I talk.
With her organization Empowerment helping youth who have been sex trafficked, if SB 379 passes, it could help her organization and minors who are excluded from the previous bill, SB 1414.
There is life after this, there is life through this, and you can get through anything.
The proposed amendment still has a long way to go in the state legislature before it comes to a vote. Those advocating for the bill tell me that they're hoping that it takes effect either this year in 2025 or in 2026.
The NFL draft in Green Bay kicks off in April. Preparations are happening now. Renderings show what the national broadcast will look like as well as what spectators will see at the event. As fun as the draft is expected to be, it has advocates against human trafficking concerned.
It's a huge issue every day, but with these
these large-scale events, most people are going to attend for fun, but what you or the ordinary person doesn't know is the dark side of it.
Kimberly Voss, president of the Life Initiative, says human trafficking can be sophisticated, whether it's labor or sex. Her organization works to prevent human trafficking while also supporting victims in their recovery. The latest published report from the Bureau of Justice Statistics says nationwide in 2022, there were an estimated 2,950 human trafficking incidents. Voss says trafficking often happens in plain sight, so be aware of people avoiding eye contact, appearing malnourished, or someone who doesn't know where they are.
Hotel, restaurant staff should be very cognizant of their surroundings and the people that they're serving.
Teenagers sold for sex is safe after being found inside a motel in Union City.
That's right, and that 16-year-old girl was found at an Econo Lodge in Union City, and now a 22-year-old man is behind bars and was allegedly trying to sell her. 22-year-old Unique Patterson behind bars tonight in a sex trafficking investigation. The Fulton County Sheriff's Office says they found a missing 16-year-old girl in one of the rooms at the Econo Lodge in Union City with Patterson. Investigators say they also found sex ads posted online dating back to January of this year.
Thank God that someone recognized that there was a child in trouble and they intervened.
Angela Williams is a victim of sexual abuse herself and now has an organization supporting survivors.
This young child will suffer in her healing for most of her life. And people don't really understand that type of trauma.
With Atlanta's airport being the world's busiest, Williams believes Metro Atlanta could easily be a congregating space for predators.
Every missing child is in danger and in need of our protection from those who seek to exploit them.
And less than 2 months ago, Atlanta Mayor Andre Dickens and airport officials held their annual news conference addressing human trafficking. According to the Georgia Department of Public Health, more than 370 girls are trafficked in Georgia every month.
It's just not our airport. We are a huge convention city also. This is a multi-billion-dollar industry, so there's a lot of greed involved, and they could care less about the child.
The child is being put in the care of the state for the time being. Right now, police are charging Patterson with interference with custody, but more charges are likely. Williams has a message for survivors.
That what happened to you is not your fault. Someone took advantage of you, evil entered your life, but that you can heal.
And she's also encouraging parents tonight to sit down, listen, and talk to your children. Sheriff Pat Labatt told us exploitation of a minor will not be tolerated.
A Hastings man is in jail after he's accused of attempting to offer controlled substances in exchange for sexual favors. Hastings police arrested 33-year-old Matthew Hagan for sex trafficking, distribution of controlled substances, and altering a drug label. HPD says Hagan offered prescription medication to a victim who's a recovering addict to help them with recovery in return for sexual favors. Police say these favors did not happen. HPD actually were called by Hagan to investigate a theft, but during the course of the investigation, authorities uncovered this situation with the accused suspect of the theft actually being the victim.
This is now the third human trafficking case we've told you about in Central Ohio just in the span of a month. The first, Marysville, then in Fairfield County, and now this one at an Airbnb in Clintonville.
Authorities arrested this man, Larry Hill of Houston, Texas. According to Attorney General Dave Yost's office, Hill and another Texas man, Tamaria Granderson, traveled from Texas with 4 victims, including a juvenile.
Bond is going to be $1 million cash surety.
Both men appeared in court this morning and will be extradited back to Texas to face charges. In Clintonville, everyone I spoke to says Hill was arrested here, a home that's an Airbnb. I went to work to see if that was the case. A quick look of the company's website, and there it is. I reached out to the owner of the home, who doesn't live here right now, and got this response. He indicates Hill and the other man were at the property for less than a day before their arrests, and they never had any interaction with them.
It should be a wake-up call for everybody.
Earlier this month, 10 TV talked with Attorney General Dave Yost about his office's efforts working with local law enforcement to put an end to human trafficking in Ohio.
We've doubled the number of task forces in this state working on this issue. We're not giving up, we're not going away, but we intend to make them go away.
For those living in this neighborhood, they say it's disrespectful of everyone involved, the victims and the couple who own the home. It's something they never would have known was happening.
Developing in Kane County today, officials are stepping up the fight against human trafficking with a brand new unit
dedicated to investigating these crimes.
Kane County State's Attorney Jamie Mosser is leading the charge, and Tia has all of the details for us. Tia?
Well, Sylvia and Terrence, Kane County officials announced the creation of a specialized human exploitation unit. Its mission is to crack down on sex and labor trafficking in that region. For years, sex trafficking cases have often been treated as prostitution investigations in Kane County, while labor trafficking has gone largely unchecked. Prosecutors, victim advocates, and investigators are now working together to change that. A major boost for this initiative, a $1 million grant from the state funding this critical work.
We know this is happening in Kane County because the St. Charles Police Department was a giant part of a sting that we had where we arrested 5 different individuals who were trafficking in the backyard of this police department. And so that's really what we're looking to do, is to have the specialized police officers and investigators who know what trafficking is, what signs there are, how we can do that. But then to have the resources available for the victims is huge, to be able to give them back their voice in the situation and help them heal.
Officials say the new unit will focus on both prosecution and victim support, ensuring survivors receive the resources that they need. They're urging the public to report suspicious activity and stay aware in the community. They want that to be remembered because they say that is the key, awareness to stopping human trafficking.
Tonight, we've learned new information about what led to the kidnapping of a Harnett County girl in February and how officers found her. The arrest warrants for the 2 suspects show they communicated with the girl on social media before picking her up from her home.
Well, Gerald, today I combed through those arrest warrants and learned that the 15-year-old girl had been communicating with one of those 2 adult men on Instagram prior to being kidnapped. An Amber Alert was sent out and a large search party combed through the area. She was found 2 days later, nearly 250 miles away from home.
Elihu Martin Mahler and Austin Lee Cole have both been charged and arrested with the kidnapping and human trafficking of a 15-year-old girl in Harnett County. The teenager was seen getting into a car outside of her Spring Lake home on February 25th. Law enforcement used flock cameras to track the vehicle and locate the girl in Dare County along the North Carolina coast 2 days later, in what officers described as fair condition. The arrest warrants included a search warrant for Mahler's DNA and showed that Cole and the victim had spoke back and forth on Instagram, eventually arranging for Mahler to pick her up outside of her home. Some of those messages included Cole telling the victim to just walk outside in a few before I pull up, another instructing her to delete all of the messages before leaving the house. I spoke to John Webster from the Child Advocacy Center. He tells me parents need to teach children about the dangers that exist online.
It's not just for any certain branch of the population or group or anything like that. This is going across all socioeconomic levels, all races, all backgrounds. And these guys and ladies that are in this business of human trafficking, they're smart and they're very good at what they do. They're apparently becoming increasingly good at what they do.
Webster went on to tell me that monitoring online activity may be an unpopular move to teenagers, but it's better to be safe than sorry.
Parents need to be looking. I think there needs to be they're probably paying the bill for their kid's phone. And so I think a parent has a right to look and see what they're looking at, what sites they're going on to. I think, also a lot of this happens late at night. Kids go to bed and parents go to bed and things happen.
Webster went on to tell me that it's never too young to teach children the importance of online safety. As far as the 2 men who've been charged in connection to this crime, they're being held on a $5 million bond.
Breaking news right now. Police take a human trafficking suspect into custody after a chase.
The LAPD officers in North Hollywood Division, they were running after this suspect through neighborhoods, backyards in North Hollywood. They finally just took that human trafficking suspect into custody, and Sky Cow was overhead right as it ended. Let me show you some video you're going to see in the center of your screen. This is Magnolia and Cahuenga. That's actually Cahuenga right there, I believe. Near Magnolia and Cahuenga, I should say. That man right there in handcuffs described as a human trafficking suspect that some plainclothes officers called for backup as they were chasing that man through neighborhoods. They said they lost him behind one of the buildings, but described him as wearing a dark green sweatshirt with colorful markings on the back. He also had some very distinctive tattoos. They said he had tattoos all over his neck and under both eyelids. So when they actually found this man, he was pretty easy to identify. You can see him being taken into custody here. Now, all we know is that he's a human trafficking suspect. That was the want, but we don't have any other circumstances surrounding surrounding that. We also saw that there were some officers in the back of homes continuing their search here, but it's unclear if this is related to that human trafficking issue or if they were just clearing the area, make sure he didn't drop anything during that chase. Anyway, no injuries reported here, and now they're getting into the back of a patrol car, very likely headed down to the Metropolitan Detention Center downtown.
An undercover human trafficking investigation leads to the arrest of 3 men in Swansea.
All of them hauled into court in Fall River, with police saying it's early in the investigation.
Jean Patrice, Swansea police arrested 3 men who met up with a police officer who was undercover as a child under 16. They hope that this investigation will stop similar behavior in the future. 19-year-old David Afriye, 38-year-old Joseph Wood, and 39-year-old Manuel Costa, all arrested in Swansea after an undercover human trafficking investigation.
We saw it as thought it would be a good opportunity to, try to do what we can to not just draw attention and, potentially discourage this type of behavior, and obviously we're not immune to it.
Swansea Police, in collaboration with Massachusetts State Police High-Risk Victims Unit and Somerset Police Department Detectives Division, conducted this joint operation. In court today, prosecutors revealed that an undercover police officer posed as a child under 16 offering herself for sex. Police arrested these 3 after they showed up to meet with her in Swansea. Bail was posted for $5,000 for each of them, and Costa posted bail and was released. All 3 are also advised to not be in contact with anyone under 18. Their defense attorneys tried to make a case to the judge.
Mr. Costa does have 3 children, a 16-year-old, a 7-year-old, and a 12-year-old. There's no allegations of any misconduct with anyone in his family.
He has absolutely no record, regardless of the dismissals or defaults. And he is, like I said, a lifelong resident.
He's currently a full-time college student.
Tonight, we are learning about 4 women who were rescued from an alleged human trafficking ring in Oakland County. The prosecutor says the leader of the operation has been charged, identifying her as Sue Wan Wan of Livonia. Investigators say the 4 women were allegedly being forced to live in Wan's massage parlors and forced to do sex work.
Check out this building in Farmington Hills. The windows blacked out, very little signage, and the location off the beaten path. Prosecutors say an illicit massage parlor was taking place inside. It's a human trafficking bust that has this woman facing serious charges. 44-year-old Sue Wan Wan is accused of running several massage parlors in Farmington Hills, Westland, and Commerce Township, where the victims were allegedly being held against their will and forced to live and work at the parlors.
Merely listing these charges does not adequately convey the scale of abuse victims suffered in this case. The victims we've identified so far are 4 women. They're immigrants and appear to have been held as virtual prisoners.
While announcing charges, prosecutor Karen McDonald said this case represents a shift in how law enforcement approaches human trafficking, putting an emphasis on treating the women as victims, not criminals.
They were forced to live inside the massage parlor, working 7 days a week from 9 a.m. to 10 p.m., providing massages to what we believe to be an almost entirely male clientele.
The Farmington Hills Police Department began investigating after undergoing special training last fall, helping them recognize the signs of a trafficking ring.
In most cases, these were businesses that operate with inconsistent business hours. There's no signage on these businesses. They black out their windows, they lock their doors to conceal what is going on inside.
Nearby businesses tell us they didn't know what to think, saying Wan and her husband bought the building 8 or so years ago.
Just to show the scope of this investigation, our investigators have identified homes, vehicles, and commercial real estate that appeared to have been paid for through this ongoing illicit and exploitive criminal enterprise.
In closing the news conference, McDonald had a message to those who keep places like this in business.
To the customers of these illicit massage parlors, that a sexual massage may seem like a victimless crime or a consensual transactional act, but for trafficking victims, they do not have the ability to consent. It is not a victimless crime.
Sue Wan Wan pled not guilty to 2 counts of human trafficking and 1 count of keeping a house of prostitution. The 4 women who were rescued are receiving care from a local organization that helps survivors.
A Panama City Beach woman is in the Bay County Jail tonight facing human trafficking charges in Leon County. Bay County Sheriff's deputies arrested 39-year-old Erica McKelvey yesterday at an apartment complex in Panama City Beach. Leon County authorities contacted Bay County earlier this month and said they had a warrant for McKelvey for trafficking a minor. She's being held in the Bay County Jail without bond pending her extradition back to Tallahassee.
Right, new at 6 right now. Take a look. This is Matthew Hayes. The 44-year-old was arrested and accused of organizing the prostitution of an underage girl. San Antonio police say the victim was a teenage runaway from Fort Worth. Detectives tracked her down through an escort website and met up with her to rescue her last month. She ended up giving investigators enough information to arrest Hayes and charge him with child sex trafficking. That is a first-degree felony. Police say there could be more victims out there, so if you recognize Hayes or have any information that could help officers, please reach out to them immediately.
The victim's testimony here was heartbreaking. She said that to this day she lives in fear of Winston Burke. Prosecutors say he was not just a pimp. He was vicious and violent towards the girls, taunting them, making them fight with each other, and in one case posting on Instagram asking which gun he should use on a girl who tried to get away. Come straight backwards, you good? This was the moment Winston Burke's sex trafficking empire came to an end.
I've explained to you.
Federal prosecutors said Burt moved women from different states, forcing them into sex work on Aurora Avenue in Seattle.
These particular victims were forced to earn $2,000 a night. The defendant would not let them come home until they had earned that amount of money.
Kate Krishman prosecuted Burt's case.
These traffickers are able to recruit victims by portraying their luxurious life on Instagram, on social media. They show their jewelry, they show their cars, they show where they're traveling, and they tell their potential victims, this is something that we can have this life together. And then, of course, once they lure them into their web, then they pull the rug out under them.
One victim spoke at Burt's sentencing, recounting the horrors she faced, including when she tried to escape Burt's control and other girls beat her into submission. She fled, running into traffic on Aurora Avenue, where an Uber driver picked her up. Burt started shooting at the Uber, but the Uber driver was armed and shot back. They had a rolling shootout, and the Uber driver got the girl to safety.
I'm just running for my life, and he started opening fire at me.
Mr. Burt used extreme levels of violence to help control and to force the women to do exactly what he wanted.
The FBI says Burt funded a lavish lifestyle off the forced sex work of his victims.
Mr. Burt was driving a Mercedes GLE. He had almost $80,000 worth of jewelry on his person, including an Audemars Piguet diamond-encrusted watch.
Let's go.
Burt's defense attorney said in court that he had a terrible upbringing, and that's what led him into a life of bad decisions and crime. The sentence here in federal court, 15 years in prison, followed by 15 years of supervised release. That'll put him into his 60s with this case still attached to him. Today, the prosecutor said that he could have faced up to life in prison, but they felt like this was a good deal, and it spared the victim from having to go through a trial.
A man charged in multiple deaths is now accused of child sex trafficking. Police say Brandon Sanders stabbed an HVAC contractor to death on top of a building in 2023. While investigating that case, they found the body of an 18-year-old woman in Sanders' freezer. At the time, there were concerns Sanders might be a serial offender linked to cases in other states. Now a federal indictment is charging Sanders with 3 counts of sex trafficking, including 1 count of trafficking a minor.
After an undercover sting operation at the Asian Massage in Rockland last month, police charged 11 men with engaging a person for prostitution. But authorities had their sights on 54-year-old Tian Tao, officials calling him the leader of a sex trafficking ring. Tao suspected of opening and operating several massage parlors in Central and Mid-Coast Maine dating back to the summer of 2024. Massage parlors that authorities say were fronts for an interstate sex trafficking operation. Police moved in on Tao Thursday morning at this house on Spring Street in Gardner.
Our detectives went up to Gardner with Gardner PD, the Kennebec County Sheriff's Department, and members of Homeland Security, and ended up taking this individual into custody.
Tao was charged with sex trafficking and was taken to the Kennebec County Jail in Augusta and released on personal recognizance. That's when Homeland Security moved in. Tao was apprehended and taken to the Cumberland County Jail in Portland, where he's being detained.
The investigation is continuing. We are still in the process of searching digital evidence with the help of Homeland Security, and he may face additional charges as well.
Police have said there are suspected ties to organized crime and human trafficking in New York. The local police tell me that Tao still faces state charges in connection with this now defunct massage parlor here in Rockland.
The Oklahoma Bureau of Narcotics Human Trafficking Unit just arrested this young woman, 23-year-old Michaela Nicole Lee. She's accused of sex trafficking an underage girl by using ads on commercial sex websites. The young victim has been found and is getting services, according to the Oklahoma Bureau of Narcotics agents.
A man is in jail tonight charged with at least 13 felony counts, including causing a person to become a prostitute by threats. Alfred Walker was arrested by the Sacramento County Sheriff's Office late last night, right here in our Fox 40 parking lot. So this started as a traffic stop when deputies realized Walker had an outstanding warrant for domestic violence. That domestic violence warrant was actually connected to a serious crime that happened back on February 18th, and detectives were searching the area for since then.
This is where the situation kind of evolved beyond just a simple quote-unquote domestic violence incident. Found out she's 17 years old, found out he was actually pimping her out. And this type of cooperation and stuff, it doesn't happen right away, but she'd obviously reached her breaking point. She'd been beaten, she'd been making money for him, handing money over to him exclusively, so she's not keeping any of it. So it's not like she was a voluntary sex worker, but this is a 17-year-old girl being exploited. I was on with Riley a couple of weeks ago, and we talked about, hey, we want to arrest the traffickers. That's the golden goose. And, you know, these investigations usually take a very long time because it's hard to get victims to cooperate. Well, this is kind of one of those, there's the golden goose, and then there's like the absolute divine intervention, perfect situation. And this was kind of all of those things in one.
Sacramento County Sheriff says that Walker was trafficking several women. They know of at least 2, taking them from Sacramento County to the Bay Area. They're looking for more victims. If there were any, you should contact law enforcement. Walker also had a loaded gun on him when he was arrested.
A man with a history of sex trafficking in Wyoming admits to committing the same crime in South Dakota. Today, 41-year-old Daniel Kubaka pleaded guilty to sex trafficking women by force. Authorities say that he had at least 4 victims in the Rapid City area. Kubaka admits to giving the women alcohol, meth, and fentanyl, and says that he threatened to hurt them or their families if they refused to have sex with people or wouldn't give him their money. According to a plea agreement, federal prosecutors have agreed not to ask for more than 40 years in federal prison. In Wyoming, he is wanted for violating probation, and in that case, he pleaded guilty to promoting prostitution and endangering children.
Indiana State Police say a months-long investigation led to the arrest of 2 northern Indiana women. Reports state Letitia Granados and Harley Cooley recruited a child for the purpose of sex trafficking. State troopers found another victim of human trafficking at their home in Fort Wayne, as well as suspected fentanyl. According to ISP, other victims are believed to be involved in human sex trafficking in Allen and Marion counties.
These men were just busted by one of Northeast Ohio's human trafficking task forces. AG Dave Yost says their arrests highlight the diverse backgrounds of those accused of trying to trade money for sex in our state. Take a look. This is 47-year-old David Saunders from Canton. He's accused of posing as a woman and selling sex online. Investigators say Saunders is a convicted felon with an extensive criminal background, and he's currently on probation for aggravated burglary and felonious assault. The task force also took a 55-year-old man into custody who happens to be a public official in Pennsylvania. According to the AG's office, Patrick Giho crossed state lines to buy sex from an ad, which was actually an undercover sting. Yost says crimes like these happen in all communities, which is why he has made it a priority to crack down on the culprits.
Human trafficking is happening every day across the state in every area, rich, poor, in the city, in the country, in good neighborhoods and bad neighborhoods. And it's something that we all ought to be keeping our eyes out for.
New this Friday morning that Queens man behind bars
accused of sex trafficking across Nassau.
We're told he entered the country illegally.
Later on this morning, 55-year-old Jorge Ramos will be transferred from police HQ here to a court in Hempstead to face a judge. What we know so far this morning is Nassau County Police say they arrested Ramos yesterday after conducting an investigation centered around possible prostitution around Nassau County between last July and this month. Ramos, who lives in Astoria, is charged with sex trafficking as well as prostitution in the second and third degrees. Police have not revealed specifics about what Ramos is charged with or where the alleged sex trafficking took place. County police said that both ICE and the FBI determined that Ramos has been in the country illegally. Law enforcement did not say when Ramos entered the country, where he is from, or how long he has been here. Detectives are asking anyone who feels they may be a victim of sex trafficking to call Crime Stoppers.
Breaking news here. A Lowell firefighter is facing child pornography and sex trafficking charges. Court documents show charges against 35-year-old David Silva were filed yesterday. Those documents say the Chelmsford man is a full-time firefighter for the city of Lowell, identified in part by an IP address traced back to a Lowell fire station. We've reached out to the Lowell Fire Department for comment. We're waiting on that.
Police say this investigation started late last year and that it led them to a firefighter here at the Lowell Fire Department. That firefighter now facing a number of charges tonight. Investigators say 35-year-old David Silva paid underage girls for naked pictures of themselves. A neighbor says this is a photo of the firefighter. Investigators say they also found hundreds of sexually explicit photos and videos of girls. Police say some of the victims reported harassment to Snapchat. One user allegedly said that he was asking for feet pics when I was 16 and he was 20. Investigators say another reported that naked images were sent. And after allegedly receiving a sexually explicit video, a third said, "I don't know this man. He is very weird. I am very uncomfortable." Now, that firefighter now chasing child pornography and sex trafficking charges. Bail in this case set at $25,000 cash. Tonight, we have not heard back from the Lowell Fire Department.
Tonight, two women say that they were beaten, branded, and sold for sex, but a local nonprofit put them on a path to healing.
New Orleans can be a postcard-worthy place, but for two women,
I was mainly trafficked in the French Quarter, and so I cannot go in the French Quarter at all.
there are certain parts of the city they avoid.
Chef Mentor Highway, that's where a lot of the kids are being sold, which in reality, if you're going there, you're going there to die. Chef Mentor Highway, kids die there.
I drive through different parts of the city, and I remember being the person just like outside of the world, watching it go by.
Both Jane and Michelle want to keep their identities private, but they do identify as survivors of sex trafficking.
I couldn't even relate to what I would have called a normal person, you know, with a life, because I didn't have a life. I was just like existing.
Trafficking happens in different forms, and so we have child sex trafficking that could look very different. And so that could be where you have a minor who's participating in sex with an adult for survival. In that case, anything of exchange of money, value, food, a place to live, that's automatically trafficking. And so I experienced that at the age of 16 to 18.
Michelle was living in New Orleans at that time. She turned 18 2 days after Hurricane Katrina and had to leave for another city. Unable to enroll in high school in that new environment, Michelle says she didn't know what to do next.
And so that put me in the streets. I was vulnerable. I ended up meeting a girl who wanted help, and she was being trafficked. I didn't know. She recruited me, brought me to her pimp. And what I didn't know was the moment that you enter a pimp's atmosphere, so pretty much their car, their hotel, their house, they automatically own you. And so that's what happened with me. And so he had me from 2007 to 2011 when I was recovered by FBI. I didn't really know if I was going to live or die.
For Jane, her first 6 years in what she and Michelle call the life started around 2012.
Very early 20s. I had a loss in my family, immediate family. Through that, I lost everything, like the rest of my family and just any foundation.
Jane says for a time she was homeless and would stay with people for shelter and survival. She says sex trafficking followed, and so did some of the darkest and most dangerous moments of her young life.
I'm lucky to be alive. I was almost sold overseas, but I escaped. I was held hostage by gang members, but I escaped.
Michelle says she tried to escape during a police raid, but paid the price for it.
The day they did a sting operation, I had decided I was either going to die or try to leave. And so when I did try to leave, my trafficker began beating me.
According to Michelle, her trafficker also left his mark on her body through tattoos.
He branded me on my leg with his name, and then, a woman who is naked and bent over on my back.
What did it do to you emotionally, psychologically, having that on your body?
Well, for my trafficker's name, it was on my thigh, so anytime I wore shorts, it was like the ownership was there. The other tattoos that I had, which is symbols of my trafficker, what he saw me as, and then I also tattooed my name on my body in case anyone found my body, that they would have a point of information of how to identify me.
Jane says some of the tattoos she placed on her body represented the self-destructive cycle she found herself in.
Well, for me, it was on my face, so it was like the first thing people saw, but it was kind of also like a cry for help. I was just trying, I try and use humor to disguise pain, so I generally would make a joke out of it.
The trafficker will sell a boy or a girl to another trafficker, and then that trafficker, that sex trafficker, will put his brand, his tattoo, on that boy or girl.
Scott Vaughn, who owns a rehabilitation and aesthetics clinic in Metairie, says up until a few years ago, he didn't know the prevalence of human and sex trafficking in Louisiana. In 2020, he bought this high-powered laser and began offering tattoo removal. This is video of Vaughn removing a tattoo at his clinic. In less than 90 seconds, the small tattoo was practically gone.
And when I saw how effective that laser was from one treatment, something just spoke to me. And I knew that I had something here. I knew that I had something that I could give back to the community and society with.
He couldn't figure out how to quite do that with the laser until his friend told him about a medical conference she attended where a sex trafficking survivor spoke about her trauma, including the lasting effects of tattoos and brandings. That planted the seed for what would become Unbranded, Vaughn's nonprofit offering tattoo removals to survivors. He says a meeting on Mardi Gras 2022 put everything in focus.
And that's where I actually spoke to the first survivor and got very emotional in that meeting, to say the least.
That survivor, Michelle.
In that meeting, he did not know that I was a survivor. And so I immediately just started crying. And I was like, you could get rid of these brandings on me. And he goes, yes. Do you want to do it right now? And I was like, no, not today, because it was so much. And so we made a plan later on, and I believe I was one of the first survivors he removed a branding from.
Unbranded also removed the tattoo on Jane's face.
I still have to stop and just be filled with gratitude that isn't what I see or what people see today, especially with how my life has developed and now how I feel anything is possible.
What's it like for you knowing that this very much is life-changing for them?
Yeah, I tell you, it's been life-changing for me because I feel grateful that I'm able to help. And I love doing it. It's the most rewarding thing I've ever done in my life.
Since 2022, Unbranded has treated 43 survivors and so far removed 350 tattoos. It can be a pricey procedure, anywhere between $3,000 and $6,000, depending on the size and ink of the tattoo. Unbranded provides the service to survivors for free.
It's like having that removed gives me a clean slate of now I have my body back. There's days I look at my arm and I'm like, I can't believe it's gone.
These are before and after photos of just a few survivors. They represent just a fraction of a much larger issue. In 2023, agencies providing help for people caught up in human trafficking identified more than 1,700 victims in Louisiana. Of those victims, 76% were new, 88% were victims of sex trafficking, and what's perhaps most sobering, 83% of the victims were 17 or younger.
And so with adults, those numbers are way, way higher. We just don't have as many adult serving agencies reporting those numbers of adults.
So it seems like from what you're saying is like we really don't have a full grasp of the magnitude of the issue of human trafficking in Louisiana because basically don't know how many adults and perhaps even minors that are really involved in it.
Yes. Yes.
Michelle has unique insight into trafficking. She's now running her own consulting company, often collaborating with the Governor's Office of Human Trafficking Prevention. Jane, too, is on a new path.
I have a really great community through my church, and I have just an amazing group of friends. I have an amazing little daughter, and I have just got to a point where I accepted a job that I'm going to be starting next week. So I'm in a very good spot in my life.
A life with fewer scars of the past.
More recently, the Sheriff's Office here in New Orleans and local charities rescued a dozen victims of sex trafficking when the Super Bowl was in town. Cases of trafficking often spike during such big events, but survivors like Michelle say kids and women are being victimized practically every day.
Simple traffic stop on Interstate 70 leading to multiple lives being saved.
And now, after 5 years, an Arapahoe County jury has found a man guilty of multiple counts related to a human trafficking bust.
Yeah, Christine and Jeremy, well, it happened on I-70 near Lyman, almost near the Kansas border. And a Colorado State Trooper pulled over a vehicle for riding in the left lane, then quickly noticed some warning signs.
It can almost seem like luck that law enforcement was able to stumble across a case like this, but really it comes down to dedicated police work and strategy.
On June 10th, 2020, a trooper spotted a car on I-70 in Elbert County camping in the left lane with no traffic nearby. A seemingly ordinary traffic stop quickly revealed multiple signs.
There were two seemingly young girls in the backseat of the car that appeared to be trying to not be noticed, putting their hood up, maybe some sunglasses on. There was the odor of marijuana coming from the vehicle as well.
They conducted a search and found bags of clothes and lingerie, including other indicators of potential sex trafficking.
Inside of those cell phones is where we find a lot of indicators of human trafficking. We find online escort ads posted on websites around the Colorado area. We find text messages. We find Cash App transactions.
The two 14-year-old girls who were runaways then talked, saying they were picked up by 34-year-old Kenneth Noel in a parking lot, who made a lot of promises, including taking them to Las Vegas to work as strippers. They are now in the care of a local human trafficking organization. This outcome is considered favorable for sex trafficking victims.
If someone doesn't get out of this life, their life expectancy is only 7 years. The most common causes of death of someone in a life of trafficking are from HIV or homicide.
This is why local organizations in Colorado are stepping in.
At Safe Places for Women, what we do is we provide long-term care when they're identified and they're ready to get to a safe place.
Ked Frank, founder of A Safe Place for Women, says last year Colorado ranked 10th in the nation for human trafficking cases. A sad statistic with not enough victim support. He's hoping more organizations step up to help.
And if there's only less than 1% actually that are actually identified as victims, there's a lot going on. And there's just a lot going on around us. And so, yeah, so when a woman can get to a safe place and to be able to begin a brand new journey, it's just an awesome thing to witness.
Prosecutors say they are thankful the state trooper knew what to look out for during this seemingly routine traffic stop. They say 1 in 5 law enforcement officers are even taught the signs. Now they're hoping that law enforcement departments will put more of an emphasis on this type of training.
And new at 4, a pair of men are charged with human trafficking after a 16-year-old girl disappeared out of Siler City. Getty Hernandez is now safe after she was missing for nearly a week, and she was found yesterday evening in Asheboro. Police arrested 2 men who now face first-degree kidnapping and human trafficking charges. They're accused of making contact with Fernandez online. And the arrests come just 1 day after 2 other men were arrested for allegedly kidnapping a 15-year-old girl out of Fayetteville. The pair made their first appearance in court today. Austin Cole and Eliu Mulhar are charged with kidnapping and human trafficking, and they're accused of taking a 15-year-old girl, Azalea Striffler, outside her home Tuesday morning. And that triggered the first of 2 statewide Amber Alerts this week. Striffler was found safe at the Outer Banks yesterday, and officials say the teen met the men online before meeting them in person.
Omaha police say 3 people were recently sentenced in a multi-year sex trafficking investigation. It started in 2022 when officers teamed up with Homeland Security Investigations. During a shoplifting call, officers found a girl who was reported missing in Kansas and was staying with a woman at an Omaha hotel. Now, police did a search of the hotel. They found items consistent with commercial sexual activity. The investigation lasted for months. Ultimately, police arrested 3 women. This year, all 3 were sentenced to prison time. 24-year-old Alexis Davis got 9 years. years for conspiracy to engage in sex trafficking of a minor. 35-year-old Joan Robinson sentenced to 19.5 years for transportation of a minor for prostitution, and a 24-year-old Kayla Beard received more than 10 years in prison for conspiracy to engage in sex trafficking of a minor.
Investigators say the woman is a survivor of sex trafficking and endured torture and horrible abuse over the past 2 weeks.
This is absolutely disturbing, disgusting, and this woman, you just called her a survivor. This guy is being held on a $3 million bond. The police are happy with that. When this man was arrested, he was surprised.
I'm going to jail, right? Yes. For what? What's my charge?
Stunned inside the Sonesta Simply Suites, later seen smiling in his mugshot.
For him to think it's funny, I guarantee you he won't be laughing long.
Southfield police arresting 41-year-old Prentice Mac Orr of Wyoming, Michigan, sex trafficking a 32-year-old Georgia woman for 2 weeks.
He had her ID, he had her phone, she couldn't talk to anyone. That's control mechanisms that these individuals have done time and time again.
The woman able to escape his room and alert a hotel employee to call 911.
She don't really know him. He has all her information and she doesn't want to be in the room.
Friday, the woman who had been homeless and may have been set up to be trafficked through a mutual friend says she only knew Orr as Jay.
And I have no way of contact with anybody. It's just him trying to control you.
Or forcing the woman to have sex for money, then taking it all. Shower and brush her teeth 5 times per day, depriving her of food, except coffee and sea moss to lose weight, even threatening to take her to Florida for weight loss surgery.
What he did to this woman is very disturbing.
Police say Orr is a career criminal with a record dating back to 1999, with charges across multiple states, including pimping and armed robbery, even bringing his 4-year-old son along with him.
Who brings their 4-year-old child from state to state when you know you're involved in human trafficking?
That child now with protective services, and that woman hiding in the hotel laundry room until police arrived, now safe too.
There could be more charges in this. That person that mutual friend who set her up to get, or who said he was going to help her get her back on her feet, well, they could be charged too, and there could be more charges for other people as well.
Southfield police arrested a man now charged with felony torture, prostitution, and human trafficking.
Police say they were able to make this arrest because the victim outsmarted her alleged trafficker. After being sold for sex in Georgia, Ohio, and other parts of Michigan, the suspect brought the victim to the Sonesta Suites in Southfield, where he was allegedly making ads to sell her in the Detroit metro area. But the victim had a plan. She purposefully left the cell phone chargers in the car, knowing the suspect would make her go grab them. That gave her the window of opportunity to escape and make this 911 call.
I was tricked into a sex trafficking situation, and I fear for my life.
The victim tells Southfield police that 2 weeks ago, she was homeless, living in Georgia, when a friend introduced her to 41-year-old Prentice Orr, saying under the guise of helping, he manipulated her into being sex trafficked.
As the victim slept, Orr would wake her up for potential clients by sexually assaulting her. The victim advised officers that while in Michigan, Orr would set up dates for her and would use intimidation tactics to prevent her from leaving.
Southfield Police Chief Elvin Barron says Orr told the victim that he was in a gang and had killed people before. He also took her ID, cell phone, and credit cards.
The victim stated that the suspect deprived her of food and only allowed her to drink coffee and sea moss, which is described as being used for weight loss.
Police were able to arrest Orr, a Wyoming, Michigan resident, saying he has a criminal history dating back to 1999. Chief Barron says he is proud of how the hotel worker, 911 operator, and police officers responded and helped the victim.
Well, give me a whole lot of you. You're right. You're safe. We don't know anything happened to you.
The victim was taken to a hospital for care. They say now she's in a shelter where she's receiving treatment.
This afternoon, investigators released body cam footage of the suspect's arrest and the victim's harrowing call to 911.
The trafficking arrest occurred here at the Sonesta Suites in Southfield. Police say it was the end of a 2-week nightmare for a woman who outsmarted the suspects.
Does he have any weapons in the room?
No, but he has killed people and he has warrants out for his arrest.
You're listening to a 911 call made late Thursday night here at the Sonesta Suites in Southfield, We've distorted the victim's voice to protect her identity. As she explained to the dispatcher and police when they arrived, she says she's the victim of sex trafficking and she wants out.
He's currently on my phone. He's currently making an ad in this area in Detroit.
She says he trafficked her using online ads.
The victim informed officers that she met the suspect through a mutual friend while she was homeless in the state of Georgia. It was during that time that the victim was forced into performing sexual acts in Georgia, Grand Rapids, and other cities throughout southeast Michigan in exchange for money.
Southfield Police Chief Elvin Barron says this police body camera footage shows the arrest of 41-year-old Prentice Mac Orr from Wyoming, Michigan. Barron says the victim describes Orr as controlling and forced her to shower and brush her teeth 5 times a day and deprived her of solid food.
As the victim slept, Orr would wake her up for potential clients by sexually assaulting her. The victim advised officers that while in Michigan, Orr would set up dates for her and would use intimidation tactics to prevent her from leaving. He told the victim that he is in a gang and has killed people in the past.
Barron says the victim outwitted the suspect by leaving their phone chargers in the car, knowing he wouldn't want to retrieve the phone chargers himself. Later, when he had her go get the chargers, that's when she made her move, asking the front desk to call 911. Orr was given a $3 million bond.
A chilling 911 call.
I was put into a sex trafficking situation.
The victim's voice altered to protect her identity. The call coming from the front desk at Sonesta Suites in Southfield late Thursday night, the hotel located near Losser and Northwestern Highway.
I'm just terrified. I'm beyond terrified.
This is police body cam video of officers arresting the suspected sex trafficker. His 4-year-old son in a nearby room with a female caretaker who investigators believe may also be a victim. 41-year-old Prentice Mac Orr, charged with human trafficking, being held on a $3 million bond. A message from Southfield's police chief.
The city of Southfield pays attention to what goes on in our area. Don't rent your rooms in our city. Let this $3 million bond and these significant charges serve as a warning for conducting these operations in our city.
Orr allegedly met the 32-year-old victim who was homeless at the time in Georgia, where the sex trafficking began, eventually bringing her to Michigan.
The victim stated that the suspect deprived her of food and only allowed her to drink coffee and sea moss, which is described as being used for weight loss.
Forced to perform multiple sex acts with clients on a daily basis, investigators say Orr had complete control over the victim.
The suspect took possession of the victim's identification, cell phone, credit cards, and prohibited her from speaking to anyone.
Telling her he was a gang member or has a criminal record that dates back 25 years. However, police did not find any weapons when they arrested him. And as far as how the victim was able to escape,
she intentionally left the chargers for the phones in the car, knowing that at some point he wouldn't want to go out and get them, but would allow her opportunity to escape.
In Southfield, Camila Mary, Fox 2 News.
A human trafficking task force in Oakland County has made its first arrest. 61-year-old Damon Napier was taken into custody in connection to 2 cases in Southfield and Warren. Napier facing 10 counts, including criminal sexual conduct, prostitution, and human trafficking. Sheriff Mike Bouchard saying anyone can become a victim of human trafficking, and the task force wants to catch criminals like Napier.
It's a crime that doesn't have a particular victim. It can victimize pretty much anybody, anywhere, and we've seen that. I think as the public becomes more aware, maybe we'll get some more breadcrumbs. You know, if we can grow our task force, we can make even bigger impacts.
Investigators think there are more victims in this case. If you know anything about this, call the National Human Trafficking Hotline. We've put that number there on your screen. It's 888-373-7888.
In lots of ways, trafficking cases can be complex. They can be going into different communities. They can involve multiple people and personalities working together with the prosecutor participating to follow this process through and help us build the cases that can stick. So that's kind of the template. This was designed on. It started small, obviously, Sheriff's Office in Madison Heights. We're looking to grow that effort, and I can tell you as of today, Southfield just signed on as well. Southfield signed an MOU today. So we anticipate other agencies will sign on to this effort because we know human trafficking is a big problem, and it tortures and subjects people to terrible conditions and terrible moments that they can't ever unlive, and have to have a process once we rescue them from that. How do they process it and move forward with their life? In this particular case, the individual that has been charged by the prosecutor's office, and I'll leave the charges to Chief Assistant David Williams to talk about, but he has a record going back way into years across the country, California, Michigan, involving even kidnapping, drugs, which obviously a common component sometimes of human trafficking is where they use drugs as kind of a control mechanism, if you will, for their victims. If they do what they're told and they do it in a way that they're told, they give them the high that they want, and there's other things that they do, but that's one of the control mechanisms that shows up in his criminal history, dangerous drugs. So his name is Damon Napier. He's from Wayne County. He's charged in 2 different cases, 2 different women, one from Oakland County and one from Macomb County, one case in Southfield and one in Warren. And as I said, oftentimes associated with that are they get them addicted to drugs and use that as leverage, and they use a variety of things to keep them in place, preventing them from getting to phones, limiting their transportation capabilities and moving them around themselves, to sell them for commercial sex activities. Oftentimes they're physically and sexually abused and assaulted in addition to that, and then, kind of plied, if you will, with illegal narcotics activity. This particular case came as a result of an investigation where a missing person out of Madison Heights in 2023 started flowing some information and ultimately revealed that Napier was a drug dealer who had befriended that victim in this case. So it kind of connected some of those dots, if you will. Multiple victims in this case already have been identified. He's in jail. He's got a total of almost $1 million cash or surety bond. But we also believe there's other victims out there. So hopefully if you're at home and you're seeing this and you were a victim of this individual, and now knowing he's in jail and now knowing he has significant charges facing him, I understand the fear of coming forward. Know that we're your advocate. He's behind bars. And if you're a victim, let's hold him fully accountable and charge him with whatever he has done to you as well. So please come forward if you are also a victim of this individual's behavior.
Good afternoon. My name is David Williams. I'm the Chief Assistant at the Oakland County Prosecutor's Office. I want to echo what the sheriff just said. The new Oakland County Human Trafficking Task Force is a team effort. This arrest is a great example of what we can do working together, but it's only possible because of the victims who came forward. And so I applaud them for doing that, and I agree with the sheriff. I hope other victims now are willing to come forward. Human trafficking is not a new problem. There was a time when the criminal justice system looked at the victims of human trafficking as if they're part of the problem. They're not. The task force is targeting the real criminals, the traffickers who are abusing and profiting from these women. This has been a top priority for the prosecutor, Karen McDonald. We know that there are more victims in this case, and we know that there are more human trafficking victims in Oakland County who we haven't found yet. Damon Napier is charged with a total of 5 counts. He's charged with 1 count of human trafficking, enterprise resulting in injury, commercial sexual activity. That's a 15-year felony. He's charged with 1 count of transporting a person for the purposes of prostitution, a 20-year felony. 1 count of accepting the earnings of a prostitute, a 20-year felony. Pandering, which is a 20-year felony. And criminal sexual conduct in the 3rd degree, which is a 15-year felony. That's in a case out of the city of Southfield. And then the defendant is charged in an additional complaint with another 5 counts being, again, human trafficking enterprise resulting in injury, 15-year felony, transporting a person for the purpose of prostitution, a 20-year felony, accepting the earnings of a prostitute, a 20-year felony, criminal sexual conduct in the 3rd degree, 2 counts, those are 15-year felonies.
So is this 10 counts total, 5 and 5, right? Yes. Can we get his age and do you have a mugshot available?
Yeah, we'll get you a mugshot, and his age is 61.
Southfield police making a big bust on a human trafficking ring across several states. Prosecutors say 29-year-old Rodney Holland got into an argument with his girlfriend at the Marvin Garden Inn.
And when asked if he intended to harm her, police say he allegedly told her, quote, "If I wanted you dead, you would be dead."
This all started with what police thought was a domestic situation, but they quickly learned it was much more than that. A Southfield police detective realized that something wasn't quite right with this story. Something didn't add up. And as you mentioned, there were some red flags.
Southfield police releasing body cam footage showing the arrest of a suspect involved in human trafficking and prostitution. Rodney Holland was taken into custody at a probation office in Detroit. Police say the 29-year-old suspect used Marvin's Garden Inn and Red Oak Inn on Northwestern Highway to traffic a 49-year-old woman from Flint.
Caption 911.
Police say the initial call came in as a domestic dispute.
A girl just came to the window. She said that her boyfriend was going to try to do something to her.
The woman later telling police she had a fight with her boyfriend.
The victim asked the suspect if he was going to harm her, at which time the suspect responded by calling her the B word and stated, "If I wanted you dead, you would be dead."
However, some details raised red flags for one Southfield detective about the nature of the woman's relationship with Holland. After some digging, police say they found a commercial sex advertisement for the woman on social media.
The victim only knew her boyfriend as Mello, and so red flag number one. How don't you know your boyfriend's name, after 4 months?
Police say human traffickers often follow a familiar pattern.
They contact people, particularly women who they feel are vulnerable, who may be in need of resources, and then they'll sell an idea of profit and security.
Police believe there could be other victims of the suspect here in Michigan, as well as Ohio and Kentucky. That investigation is ongoing. Police also say Holland has a lengthy criminal record that includes assault with a dangerous weapon and strangulation. Meanwhile, he remains behind bars.
A suspected human trafficker arrested.
Drop your keys. Drop your keys.
That suspect in the video, 29-year-old Rodney Holland of Ferndale, charged with 2 human trafficking counts and 2 prostitution counts.
The evidence suggests that there are other victims of our suspect, and those victims are potentially out of Detroit, Grand Rapids, Ohio, Kentucky, and Indiana.
This human trafficking bust stemming from a 911 call Sunday night after a 49-year-old woman came to the receptionist at the Red Oak Inn in Southfield for help.
She was very afraid, and she said that he was on his way to come, so I just gave her a key to a room. So is she in the room now? Yes.
If I wanted you dead, you would be dead.
That's what Southfield Police Chief Elvin Barron says Holland told the victim after an altercation where Holland had taken her phone. Police made contact with the victim, but Holland was no longer there. Detectives say their investigation uncovered Holland had been trafficking this woman for around 4 months, using rooms at the Red Oak as well as the nearby Marvin Gardens Inn.
She also made statements that she was tired, scared, and wanted to get out. See, these are signs, these are words that it's important for any agency, particularly detectives, to pick up on.
That's because human trafficking victims are oftentimes scared into secrecy. Another sign, the victim only knew Holland as the name Mello. Detectives dug and uncovered Holland's identity. He had a long rap sheet and was on probation for a domestic strangulation charge. Police set a sting at the probation office to make a safe arrest. Holland's bond was set at $700,000 cash surety.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you all for coming out. I'm Deputy Chief Aaron Hughley. I oversee the Investigations Division and serve as our agency's Public Information Officer. Today, Chief Barron will provide details on a human trafficking investigation and the outstanding investigative work that led to the arrest of a career criminal. The incident occurred on Sunday, March 2nd, 2025 at approximately 1:30 a.m. At the Marvin's Garden Inn here in the city of Southfield. And without any further delay, Chief Barron.
And as always, thank you, Deputy Chief. I'm going to start off my remarks by just reminding everybody that human trafficking, as we all know, is not only a global crisis, but a national crisis, and certainly a crisis here in Southeast Michigan. Southfield Police, particularly our great detective work, unpacking a human trafficking operation and rescuing a victim from their abuser. And so we're going to talk about this particular individual. We're going to share 911 audio. We're going to show you the video of the arrest, because as we always do, and I always say this, no matter how dangerous the suspect is. We always show you how we bring these individuals in custody because it's important that we continue to show that this agency is professional. The victim and her abuser had 2 hotel rooms in Southfield. One was the Marvin's Garden Inn, located at 27650 Northwestern Highway, and the other was the Red Oak Inn, located at 27660 Northwestern Highway. And keep in mind, they're in very close proximity to one another. So on Sunday, March 2nd, at approximately 1:30 a.m., Southfield officers was dispatched to the Red Oak Hotel on a report of a disturbance. The call came from the front desk clerk of the Red Oak Hotel, who stated that a female approached the desk and was in fear of her boyfriend. Southfield officers arrived on scene and spoke with the 49-year-old victim, who is a resident of Flint, Michigan, and advised them that she has been in a dating relationship with the suspect for approximately 4 months. We later identified the suspect as Rodney Holland, 29 years old, a resident of Ferndale, Michigan. The victim also disclosed to the officers that the suspect had assaulted her in the past, but those incidents had not been reported to law enforcement. And also, she was very emotional during that interview with our officers, visibly afraid as she spoke with our officers. The victim stated that she had gotten into a verbal dispute with the suspect over an undisclosed matter. The victim retreated to her vehicle to distance herself from the suspect. The victim had been in communication with her sister and had made plans to return to Flint to escape her abuser. As the victim sat in her vehicle, the suspect approached and requested that she exit the car. The victim asked the suspect if he was going to harm her, at which time the suspect responded by calling her the B word and stated, "If I wanted you dead, you would be dead." The victim then exited the vehicle to distance herself from the suspect for a second time and began walking towards her hotel room, which was at the Marvin Gardens Inn, in order to gather her belongings. The victim returned to the vehicle with her cell phone in hand and instructed the suspect to get out of her car. The suspect refused to exit the victim's vehicle and snatched her cell phone from her hand and did not return it. Fearing that she would be assaulted by the suspect, the victim ran to a nearby vehicle that was in the parking lot. A private citizen then gave the victim a ride to the Red Oak Inn, at which time Southfield Police was contacted again by the front desk clerk to respond for assistance. And we do want to pause here and thank that private citizen for getting involved, because you never know what could have transpired had that intervention not take place. And also keep in mind that our initial report was for a domestic dispute. However, through exceptional detective work, a human trafficking component was uncovered. The lead detective reviewed this incident and saw signs that the victim was possibly being human trafficked by her abuser. Through her training and experience, really played into this particular investigation. So I had the opportunity to sit down with this particular detective because I wanted to kind of explore her thought pattern as to how she was able to get this victim to talk. As you all know, oftentimes these victims, again, are fearful. There was a lot of secrecy. So it's important to have detectives understand that. So the detective shared with me that the very first sign that brought to her attention that something wasn't right and that we may have had a human trafficking component to this was that the victim only knew her boyfriend as Mello. And so red flag number one, how don't you know your boyfriend's name after 4 months? Also, the detective decided to review body-worn camera after discovering this first red flag to see if there's any other evidence that would lead her to furthering her thought pattern of a possible human trafficking. What she discovered through watching the body camera vehicle, the victim certainly very emotional, very afraid. She made declarations that she was scared and had nowhere else to go. She also made statements that she was tired, scared, and wanted to get out. See, these are signs, these are words that it's important for any agency, particularly detectives, to pick up on. And what I'll tell you about this particular detective, she does have the ability to connect with her victims, the cases that she's assigned to, because it's important to get that line of communication going. So our detective discovered that the victim had a commercial sex advertisements that were posted on social media, and we do know this particular site is known for sex work activities. The evidence suggests that there are other victims of our suspect, and those victims are potentially out of Detroit, Grand Rapids, Ohio, Kentucky, and Indiana. And our detectives are currently working to identify these potential victims. The victim also disclosed to detectives that the suspect had forced her to have multiple dates with men, that the suspect also regularly assaulted her. And so Southfield detectives were able to track down our suspect. At the time of this incident, he'd already fled from the area. But again, we either track him down where detectives gained knowledge that our suspect was actively on probation for domestic violence strangulation out of Wayne County. So they were able to coordinate with the probation office in Wayne, Detroit, Greenfield office to set up an arrangement to take him to custody. And he was taken to custody without incident. And again, I'll show you that video shortly. Our suspect does have a lengthy criminal history from receiving and concealing stolen property, fleeing and eluding third degree, assault, resisting, obstructing police officers, reckless driving, assault with intent to do great bodily harm, strangulation, assault with dangerous weapon. We can report at this time that our victim is currently safe and with family members at this time. So our suspect, Rodney Holland, was charged by the Oakland County Prosecutor's Office. Count 1, human trafficking, forced labor causing injury. Count 2, prostitution, transporting person. Count 3, accepting and receiving earnings from a person engaged in prostitution. Count 4, human trafficking enterprise causing injury. Our suspect received a $750,000 cash bond. And so at this time, we're going to transition to the 911 audio so that you hear exactly what officers had at the time of the incident. And then we're going to always point out that this, again, was a domestic dispute. Through great detective work, uncovered a human trafficking operation.
2025, 1:35, 53.
Southfield 911.
Hi, I'm at the Red Oak Inn on Northwestern Highway at the front desk. A girl just came to the window. She said that her boyfriend was going to try to do something to her, and I gave her a room by the office. I don't know her name or anything, but she said she needs the police here.
Have you seen the boyfriend, or do we know where he is?
No, I didn't get too much information. She was very afraid, and she said that he was like on his way to come, so I just gave her a key to a room. So,
is she in the room now?
Yes.
What room now? And your name? Okay, we'll get all turned over then.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Then we transition to the video of the arrest.
1:36:46.
Grab yourself and press up backwards. You got it.
I want to point out, when you see the manner in which this individual was taken into custody, continue to go back to our detectives, always thinking. Dangerous suspect, unknown on what harm he could cause to the community or officers, and then thinking enough as they did their homework on him, discovering that he was currently on probation. Well, why not contact the probation office and put them in a controlled environment and then take them into custody without incident to the officers or the community. So again, I'm going to continue to brag on the Southfield police officers and our detectives for thinking, getting out ahead of these situations, empathy that they show. It's a great department, and we're going to continue to express that to this community, the work that they do, and it will not go unnoticed, particularly when they're bringing into custody dangerous suspects time after time after time. I stand before this podium and share this with you, how when we take these type of people off the street, it makes an impact. How many more victims were potentially going to fall prey to this individual and those other ones that we arrested? Right, so again, the investigation is still moving forward. A lot of our information we did get from the victim who did share with us other potential victims that we're reaching out to. At this time, we're not certain whether he's working alone, no evidence whether he has other people involved, but that will come out through our investigation. So this is all relatively new. Again, we just arrested him just a few days ago, so more work to do, more victims to contact, and then we'll have a bigger picture, or should I say a better picture of his enterprise at the appropriate time. So when you look at these human traffickers, their behaviors are very similar. Regardless of what state you're in, they contact people, particularly women who they feel are vulnerable, who may be in need of resources, and then they'll sell an idea of profit and security by lending themselves under their direction. So this is pretty much how this occurred. You know, he came in contact with her during a vulnerable state in her life, just like the last predator that we got out of Sonesta Sweeps. And then from there, tricked her into a pattern of human trafficking and sex work activity. According to her, for approximately 4 months of abuse and human trafficking. These hotels in Southfield, really hotels in other places as well, but we'll just talk about Southfield for now. They are very well aware of human trafficking and the potential for it to come to their particular hotels. And there are trainings that hotel management does have with their employees to identify these type of situations. And as you mentioned, in both situations, the victims came to them for refuge, for safety. And again, in both situations, they both delivered by giving them a safe haven to operate out of, and then contacting the Southfield Police Department without hesitation. Training, relationships with our department, and then also they're just good human beings who see someone in distress, gets involved, and then notify police without hesitation. I also gave credit to that bystander who she ran to in the parking lot. You know how often times people don't get involved, but in these instances, we're very fortunate to have community members who stepped up to get involved and ultimately help us rescue another person from human trafficking lifestyle. There may be a situation where you feel as though you can help someone and won't jeopardize your safety. And I believe in the situation with the person in the parking lot, obviously he looked at the area, he probably looked at the distance the victim was from the suspect, and maybe decided, okay, I can get her in my car and get her out of this area very quickly. So again, applauding him for having that type of courage to do that. And then for the hotel management, I think it's just being responsible, thanking all the hotels for having training, human trafficking. We know that nurses also get the same type of training because our victims show up in ERs. And so I think the community is involved, and it does help us manage this situation, and in this case, and in other cases, to uncover it. So again, if you decide to get involved, first step, 911, and then secondly, make sure that it's safe for you to go down that avenue. And looking at the fact that they had 2 rooms, I would garner that the one room was the room that they would stay in, and then the other room would be used for those sex work activities. And thank you all for being here. Get this information out and let our community know that, again, we're paying attention to what goes on in the city of Southfield, and we are holding these individuals accountable. Thank you.